Your phone is face down on the kitchen counter, screen pressed to the tile. The last transfer cleared this morning, $22,100 total across 2 years of saying yes. You didn't lose it. You gave it. And right now, those two things feel exactly the same. Let's go back to the dinner table where none of this had started yet. Most first-gen builders hit stage 8 without a budget for it. And that's when the family dynamic stops being emotional and starts being expensive. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how your family's perception of you shifts, stage by stage, as you become the first person in your family's history to build real wealth. Not just the proud moments, the complicated ones too. The requests, the silence, the envy that never says its name, and the specific weight that comes with being the first example anyone in your bloodline has ever had. 9 stages. And the one that catches most first-gen builders completely off guard isn't the envy. It's stage 8. That's the one that costs real money and takes years to untangle. Let's start at the beginning. Stage 1. You've started. You opened the brokerage account, the account where you actually buy investments. Maybe it has $340 in it. You set up an automatic transfer of $200 a month, and the first Friday it runs, you don't feel it leave. That's the point. You said no to the group vacation because you did the math and $1,100 for a long weekend doesn't work right now. And your family notices the no before they notice anything else. They don't know about the account. They don't know about the $200 a month. What they see is, you're not coming to things, you're not spending. You split the check carefully at dinner. You didn't buy rounds at the birthday bar night. In the vocabulary they have for money, this reads as cheap. It doesn't read as building. Because in a family where money was always something that left before the month ended, where $200 was a car repair, not an investment, there's no framework yet for the idea that you're doing something purposeful with it. Their model of money is reactive. You've switched to proactive, but from the outside, proactive and stingy look identical. The misread stings. But here's the thing nobody tells you about stage 1. You don't build wealth and then change your habits. You change your habits, and then, slowly, everything else changes, including what your family thinks they're seeing. Stage 2 comes about 12 to 18 months in. You haven't said a word about what you're doing, but something has changed in how you carry yourself, and the people closest to you can feel it. It's not the money. At $4,800 in the account, there's nothing visible to see. It's the absence of the stress they're used to seeing on you. You used to get that look when rent was 3 days out. You used to cancel plans because of timing. You used to check your phone at dinner with a certain tension. And now you don't. The low-grade anxiety that was always in the background has gotten quieter, and they don't know why. Your mom might say, "You seem different." Your younger sibling might ask if something happened at work. What they're picking up on isn't wealth. It's the beginning of financial stability. The difference between someone who has a small but growing cushion and someone who is one unexpected bill from the edge. Here's what's actually happening in the numbers. 3 months of expenses in a high-yield savings account. If you make $42,000 a year, that's roughly $10,500 sitting somewhere, earning about 4.2%, generating around $441 a year just to exist. You haven't told them about the number. You don't need to. They can see it in how you hold yourself at the table. And something shifts. They start asking your opinion. On small things first. Your cousin's friend wants to know if buying a car on a credit card is a good idea. Your mom mentions a payday loan her coworker took out and looks at you to see your reaction. You haven't announced anything. But somehow, in the room, you've become the person people look at for the answer. The account balance didn't change the room. Your nervous system changed the room. That's stage 2's real lesson, and it's the one that doesn't show up on a brokerage statement. Stage 3 is the one that sneaks up on you. Because it's not loud. It doesn't come with a conversation or a speech. It comes as a small thing your dad says to someone else when he doesn't think you're listening. You overhear him telling a neighbor, "Yeah, my kid's doing well, man. Really got it together." That's it. That's all of it. He doesn't say it to you directly. He can't. Because in your family's language, talking directly about money or success still feels like tempting fate, or bragging, or creating a target. So he says it sideways, to someone else, with a small nod. And you stand in the doorway of that moment and feel two things at once, something that should feel good and something that aches. The pride is real, but underneath it is the awareness of everything it took to get here that he doesn't fully see. The 2 years of saying no when everyone else said yes. The 23 Saturday mornings reading about index funds, low-cost baskets that hold the whole market instead of betting on single stocks, while everyone else slept in. The $347 auto-transferring out of your checking account on the first of every month, quiet, reliable, going nowhere anyone could see yet. The silence you've built your money in has kept you safe from having to justify it before it was real. That's the practical reason. But it also means that the pride happening around you is happening without the full story, and some part of you wonders if you'll ever be able to tell it. This is the stealth wealth reality for first-gen builders that nobody talks about. You aren't quiet about your money because you read some article about not flashing wealth. You're quiet because flexing on people who have less than you, and those people are people you love, is something you can't do. The silence isn't a strategy, it's just decency. And that decency has a cost that doesn't show up anywhere. You earn the progress alone. You absorb the uncertainty alone. The win, when it comes, lands in a room where nobody knows what they're looking at. Stage 4 starts sometime in year 2 or 3. You've never made an announcement, you've never posted about it, but somehow, across the family network, through your mom mentioning something, through your body language at gatherings, through the fact that you stopped complaining about money in the way everyone else still does, word has traveled, and now the requests come. They don't come as demands. They come as soft, casual questions with a lot of context in front of them. A call from an aunt that starts with 15 minutes of catching up before she mentions that her electric bill was higher than expected this month. A text from a cousin. Hey, I know you're good with money. I just need like $300 for 2 weeks. I'll pay you back. A sibling who's behind on rent and wonders if you could just cover it this once. Here's the reality. You probably can cover it. You've got $18,000 in the brokerage and a $6,000 emergency fund. $300 isn't a hardship. That's exactly what makes it complicated. The people asking know roughly what you can do, and you love them. And $300 to your cousin who's struggling is the difference between her lights staying on. The rule most first-gen builders learn painfully, and then have to learn again, is this. Money you give to family should be sized to what you can afford to give, not lend. Lend implies they'll pay it back. Most of the time, in most families, they won't. Not because they're dishonest, but because if they had the money to pay you back, they wouldn't have asked. So the decision is not, should I lend $300, but am I willing to give $300? If yes, give it cleanly. If no, say no cleanly. What you cannot do is say yes out of obligation and then run a quiet resentment tab. That destroys the relationship and the money at the same time. But here is what the situation is actually setting up. The most dangerous thing about stage 4 isn't the $300 request. It's that each individual yes is reasonable. It's the accumulation that isn't. And right now, while each yes still feels manageable, someone in the family is making a different calculation entirely. Not what they can ask you for, but whether they can still look at you without the weight of what they haven't built pressing in. That's stage 5. Stage 5 is harder to name while it's happening, because it doesn't come as hostility. It comes as a slight change in temperature. A sentence that sounds like a compliment but has something underneath it. Must be nice. Not all of us can just invest, you know. You've always been lucky with this stuff. A joke in a group chat that has a little too much edge to it. This is envy in the shape it actually takes in families. Not open, not admitted, not processed. Families who love each other don't fight about money cleanly. They take small shots that have plausible deniability. And if you call it out, you become the person making it weird. What's happening underneath is real and understandable. Some of the people in your family have worked just as hard as you, maybe harder. They made similar choices under similar circumstances, and your outcomes are diverging in a way nobody has a satisfying explanation for. You don't either, honestly. The difference might partly be the financial decisions. The money quietly multiplying on top of itself, the index fund, the $347 you moved on the first of every month for 4 years, quietly, without telling anyone. But it's also timing, stability, some luck, some access. You know that. And the person making the joke knows that you know that. What you are watching, without being able to name it in real time, is what diverging financial trajectories look like from the inside of a family. Two people who started in the same place. One is now 38 months into a system. The other isn't. The gap between them isn't dramatic yet. It's maybe $14,000 in a brokerage account versus zero. But the gap is compounding every month whether the conversation happens or not. The move here is not to argue and not to apologize. You don't shrink yourself to make others more comfortable. That's not kindness. That's shared stagnation. But you also don't need to prove anything. At this stage, the people watching your life most closely are running their own quiet calculation about whether your way of doing things is actually worth copying. Let the results speak slowly. Quick thing before we keep going. If this is landing, subscribe. It's the easiest way to make sure the next one reaches you. Okay, back to it. Stage 6 is the one you don't see coming. Because it's not a fight. There's no confrontation. There's no moment where something breaks. There's just a cousin who used to call every few weeks, and then every few months, and then not at all. A sibling who went quiet after the last time you said no to something. A family member who replies to your texts with one word, when they used to reply with paragraphs. The drift is slow, and it happens in the background. You only notice it when you realize you can't remember the last time this person reached out first. You check the chat history. The last conversation is from 9 months ago. The one before that, 11 months. You've exchanged maybe 6 messages in a year with someone you used to talk to every week. Here is the version of this that's true. Sometimes people pull away from you when you're growing because they haven't found a way to reconcile your growth with how they see themselves. It's not malice. It's that your existence, doing well while they're not, is a mirror they don't want to look into right now. You remind them of a gap, and the easiest way to manage that feeling is distance. Here is the other version that's also true. Sometimes the pullback is about a specific thing that was never said, a request that was declined, a loan that was forgotten, an expectation that wasn't met. A $300 that you said no to 6 months ago and never spoke about again. If you don't know which one it is, you can ask once, directly and gently. If the answer doesn't come, let them have the space. What you cannot do is chase people into accepting a version of you that makes them feel worse. The people who will be in your life as you keep building are the ones who can hold their own pride alongside your progress. That's not a small number, but it's not everyone. Distance is not always abandonment. Sometimes it is just grief that hasn't found its language yet. And the people who eventually find that language are the ones who will come back and ask you something different from money. That is stage 7. Stage 7 changes the whole register of the story, because after all of the doubt and the misread silence and the requests and the envy and the pullback, someone asks, not for money, for knowledge. It might be a younger cousin. It might be a sibling who watched you quietly for 3 years and finally asks one Sunday afternoon, how are you actually doing this? It might be your mom who passes you an envelope with $800 in it and says she saved it and wants to know where to put it. And you feel something you weren't prepared for, which is that this is the moment you built toward without knowing it. All of those years of doing it without talking about it, they were paying forward to this one conversation. Because you are now, actually, the example. Not a hypothetical, not a story someone read. The real thing, in the room, who can be asked. This is where the first-gen moat becomes something larger than your own account. Because if you can hand someone a framework, open this account, automate this transfer, here's what a target date fund is. A single fund that automatically shifts your money towards safer investments as you get closer to retirement. Your one financial trajectory quietly becomes 2. At 7% average annual return, $50 a month for 35 years is approximately $91,000. That's the math on one conversation. The example you set isn't just about your balance. It's about the decision architecture you hand to the next person who decides to try. And the next. That is what it actually means to be first. Stage 8 is the stage this whole video has been building toward. And it's not a single moment. It's a slow accumulation that you don't recognize as a pattern until the pattern is already expensive. It starts reasonably. You help with one bill because you can. then another because it was a hard month. Then a parent's car breaks down and there's no one else who can cover the $1,100 repair, and you have the money, so you do. Then a sibling's rent, $850 that month. Then a cousin's community college registration, $430. Then your mom mentions she's been covering her sister's phone bill for 4 months at $89 a month. And could you help offset that? Individually, every one of those decisions made sense. Collectively, they've added up to you being the family's financial infrastructure, the person everyone assumes will absorb the shocks. And nobody asked you. It just happened, through a series of reasonable yeses. Here's what the math looks like after 2 years of this. If you covered 6 separate family expenses averaging $680 each over 24 months, that's $4,080 that didn't go into your brokerage account. At 7% annual return over 25 years, $4,080 compounds to approximately $22,100. That's the real cost? Not the $4,080, but the $22,100 that your future self doesn't have. The answer is not to stop helping. The answer is to treat family financial support as a line item in your actual budget. The same way you budget for rent, for investments, for subscriptions. Decide in advance what your annual family support number is. Maybe it's $1,200. Maybe it's $3,000. That number is yours to set. And when it's spent for the year. The hardest part of Stage 8 isn't the money. The hardest part is that you have to decide what you can afford to give before you're asked. Because the answer you give in the moment, when someone you love is in front of you with a real problem, will always be yes. The budget has to exist before the ask arrives. Stage 9 is not really a stage. It's the thing that runs underneath all the other stages, the whole time, that you only get language for later. Being the first person in your family to build real wealth is a double-edged condition. You carry something that nobody handed you. Every decision, every framework, every habit was self-assembled from scratch, often while people around you thought you were being weird or difficult or cold. You figured out the account types and the tax-advantaged accounts that shelter your growth from taxes and the automation and the patience, all without a template. You learned to move $347 a month on the first and not flinch. Then $747 a month by year 5. You learned to say no in ways that cost you something relationally, and say yes in ways that cost you something financially, and you had to figure out the right ratio of those two things entirely on your own. And you carry the weight of having figured it out while the people you love didn't. That's not guilt. Or it shouldn't be. But it's a specific kind of loneliness that doesn't have a clean name. You can't fully celebrate in the rooms where it would land wrong. You can't complain about the complexity of managing money to people who would trade their problems for yours without hesitation. But here is the other side of that weight. You are the pattern break. In every family that eventually produces multi-generational wealth, there is a first person. Someone who made decisions that looked strange from the outside and held them long enough for the results to become undeniable. You are that person in your family's history. The decisions you're making right now, the $347 a month, the no to the group trip, the yes to the cousin who wanted to learn. Those decisions are the foundation that someone in your family will build on for the next 40 years. You won't get a ceremony for it. Your family might not even fully understand it until you're gone. But the quiet work you're doing right now, the unglamorous, boring, reliable accumulation, is the most consequential thing happening in your family's financial history. And it started with you deciding that the way things have always been was not the way things had to stay. 9 stages. None of them clean, all of them real. If you're somewhere in the middle of this, closer to stage 4 than stage 9, still fielding the questions and the requests and the silence, know that the path through is the same as the path you've already been on. Patient, quiet, consistent. The family perception catches up to the reality eventually. It always does. If you want the first-gen Money Talk Guide, a free PDF with the actual conversation frameworks for navigating family money dynamics at every stage, the link is in the description. It covers how to say no without burning relationships, how to set the family support budget, and how to have the Stage 7 conversation when someone finally asks to learn. It's free. Drop a comment if you're first gen. I want to hear where you are in these 9 stages. And if you've been watching the first gen wealth series from the beginning, the next video is the one that breaks down exactly why the first $100,000 is harder to build than the second $900,000. That's next. And before you go, if this helped, like it and subscribe so the next one finds you.